Hey everybody, it's Cave Cat once more, here to bring you another episode of Cave Cat's movie and TV reviews. This is it. We finally reached the proverbial episode 50 of the series, the Big 5-0. Can you believe that's been over 2 years since I first started this review series? I can hardly believe it myself either. But anyway, with all that said and done, this review is actually going to mark the third time that I've reviewed an anime series, following when I reviewed Digimon Frontier for episode 11 and Superbook for episode 25. What am I talking about, you ask? First, do any of you remember Little Lulu, comic strip character created by Marjorie Henderson Buell back in the 1930s, later becoming famous enough to get her own series of animated shorts adapted by famous studios in the 1940s? I will be completely honest here. I never really got into the Little Lulu shorts when I was younger, because I remember being scared by the 1946 short Bargain Counterattack after watching it on a VHS tape that had some classic cartoons from back in the 1930s and or 1940s. I stayed away from the Little Lulu cartoons because of that, except for the one time when I saw an episode of the 1995 animated series while my family and I were on vacation years ago. However, prior to the 1995 Little Lulu series that was produced by Sonar, and especially after the famous studio's Little Lulu shorts were produced, there was another animated Little Lulu series, yet it actually aired in Japan in the 1970s. So what's the show? That would be Little Lulu and Her Little Friends, which was the name that it went by in Japan. Yes, you heard me right. Little Lulu was actually adapted into an anime series back in the 70s. Anyway, for those who don't know, this version of Little Lulu was actually produced and adapted by Japanese animation studio Nippon Animation, the exact same studio that was also responsible for producing other anime series like Maya the Bee, Future Boy Conan, D'Artagnan and the Three Muskehounds, Around the World with Willy Fogg, Grimm's Fairy Tale Classics, the Jungle Book anime, and many others. I wasn't even aware of the existence of this version of Little Lulu until a little over 15 years ago, when I discovered it while I was browsing YouTube. And though I was at first a little bit hesitant to give it a try, I watched it and I immediately fell in love with this version of Little Lulu, as well as giving me a newfound respect for Little Lulu. But enough about that. It's time to get this review started. The anime basically follows the adventures of Lulu and her friends, where they basically get into all sorts of adventures, some of the episodes actually being adaptations of Little Lulu comic stories, because yeah, Little Lulu was also adapted into a series of comic books. But moving on, even though this anime is based on the original Little Lulu comics and cartoon shorts, the art style is actually a little bit different from the comics and shorts, to the point that the characters actually look more like Peanuts characters than Little Lulu characters, but I still think that the art style fits the anime very nicely. In fact, speaking of the characters, aside from Lulu herself, we also get other characters from the comics like Tubby, Alvin, Annie, Iggy, Willie, Eddie, and even Wilbur and Gloria as well. However, there's actually a bit of a drawback with this anime regarding the characters. Lulu is still the main character, just like she was in the comics and the shorts, with Tubby also sharing the spotlight with her. And even though characters like Alvin, Annie, Iggy, and Wilbur make more prominent appearances, others like Willie, Eddie, and Gloria are either demoted to just background characters that don't appear at all, or do appear but just don't have many lines, if any at all. Also, another thing is that in the original comics, Lulu, Tubby, and the others would sometimes be accosted by a rival gang of boys known as the West Side Gang, so named because they resided on the west side of town. Now, the West Side Gang did appear in some episodes of the anime, but for some reason they actually looked radically different from how they appeared in the comics, with even one of them looking like a male version of Peppermint Patty from the Peanuts comics. Not to mention another big glaring change from the comics. In the original comics, Wilbur was the snobbish and antagonistic rich kid who was spoiled and took every opportunity to try to make trouble for Lulu and the others, but often got his comeuppance. Here, he's actually a part of Lulu's friend group and is actually a lot more amiable and friendly compared to his comics counterpart. Although, at least the 1995 Sonar series did restore Wilbur's original personality to how he was depicted in the comics. But despite this, it's still great to see the anime do its own take on the Little Lulu comics and shorts, even if it does follow some of the basic anime rules at the time. And as for the anime itself, I actually really like it a lot, because you know me well enough to be interested in just about any kind of anime that meets my fancy, especially considering the fact that I previously reviewed two already, being Digimon Frontier and Superbook, as I mentioned earlier. After all, Nippon Animation, the studio that produced this version of Little Lulu, would also produce other similar kid-oriented anime shows like the ones I mentioned before, like Maya the Bee, D'Artagnan, and Willy Fogg, which I have yet to actually watch for myself. But even though I actually found myself enjoying the Little Lulu anime, there's actually one snag in regards to the anime. While the anime did first premiere on Japanese television back in 1976, it wasn't until 1978 that it was brought to America and ended up getting dubbed into English. But the problem with that is that only a handful of episodes were dubbed into English, while the others were undubbed. This is a similar problem that has happened with other anime series such as The Adventures of the Little Prince, while others like Galaxy Express 999 and Silver Fang aired back in the 70s and 80s on Japanese television, but never got the chance to be dubbed into English. And also, once those episodes were dubbed, they were released on VHS by Family Home Entertainment back in the early 1980s. And this was back in the time when Family Home Entertainment had just been established as a home video venue. And aside from releasing some animes on VHS, they also released a bunch of old Gumby shorts on VHS as well. However, good luck trying to find these VHS tapes online, especially since they've been long out of print for many years. Even though the Little Lulu anime did kind of change a few things from the comics and sideline a few characters from the comics, I still think that's a pretty enjoyable anime that did its own take on what made the Little Lulu comics and famous studio cartoon shorts great. The quality may seem a little bit lower than that of the original famous studio shorts or even the Sonar animated series, but if you're a fan of Little Lulu or even a fan of old style anime, then go ahead and give the Little Lulu anime a watch. I certainly did, and I can certainly say that I really enjoyed it very much. So it's because of this that I will give Little Lulu and her little friends 8 stars. It's amazing the way I've gone from avoiding everything Little Lulu related for a long time to having a newfound respect for it thanks to discovering that this version exists, even if there are a few times where the anime pales in comparison to the comics or the original shorts. With that said, I still enjoyed the Little Lulu anime for what it is even in spite of this. Sure, it may have its flaws when it comes to trying to adapt the Little Lulu comics, but if you can learn to overlook those flaws and just enjoy the show as is, you'll see that it's actually a very passable adaptation of the Little Lulu cartoons and comics that does its best to go above and beyond and staying true to the spirit of what made Little Lulu great in the first place. No matter which version of Little Lulu that you're more interested in, whether it's the original Marge Buell comics, the famous studio shorts, the comic books, the 1995 animated series, the Brazilian comic that reimagines Lulu and the gang as teenagers, or even this version, it's still a great way to really showcase Little Lulu in just about any kind of medium, whether it's American or even from a foreign country. No question about it. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Cave Cat's movie and TV reviews. If you really liked this episode, then be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more episodes or other videos that'll come your way. Until next time, see you in the future!